And without further ado, here they are. Hi, guys. Wonderful to see you. Just absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. As you might know, imagine it's been quite a long night. I happen to know one of you also had quite a long night. I think we're all enormous fans of the importance and power of coaching and the life-changing difference it can have. And it's something we really wanted to highlight in this conference. And so I want to thank you for coming. You're also all part of our ADHD UK system. You volunteer and support the charity, and you provide support groups and as well as often conversations with me to educating us on what's needed. Like you are wonderful. So bear that in mind when I get to the questions. No, they're all wonderful and charming. Right, let's do introductions. I'm reading for a pre-written. It's been a long night. Hopefully you all know what I'm about to say. So Kim Tu, founder of onlyourinfair.com, certified ADHD coach. Lex Harvey-Bryn, a neurodivergent coach and therapist and head of training at Headstuff. Katie Friedman, ADHD coach, coach trainer, TEDx speaker, and director of Goldmine Neurodiversity Limited. Kaye, he's a positive psychology ADHD coach and laughter yoga leader. And if you want to try a taste of it, for all of these people that come to one of the sessions that they do with ADHD UK, supporting bringing what they do to people at no charge. They don't charge for their time to us, and it enables us to get support to everyone. And it's a very important thing. It's a wonderful thing. And if you're in the market for a coach, it's also a wonderful way to test out a coach, see what they are, and see different coaches and start to work out which you think you're going to gel with. And that's better for everyone. It's better for the coach, better for you, because you find someone who you're going to gel with. It's a really great thing to do. Natasha, Hickling, ADHD life coach for adolescents, families, young adults and couples. And when we first met her, she was in Singapore and recently become a coach, moved back into the UK, but a wealth of experience around adolescents. And Alex Campbell, ADHD coach, therapist, speaker, mental health first aid instructor. He provides basically zero cost mental health first aid training for all the staff here, which is really a wonderful thing. And we are very grateful for it. It is important. I think in the intro, I'm not quite sure if you heard it. We talked about some of the really significant mental health risks around ADHD and working, and so being able to know what to do in a crisis is very, very important. And we thank him for it. And he's founded ADHDAlex.com, I think. Yes. Before I go into the questions, I thought I'd start with a question for Alex. How are you feeling, Alex?
Well, had a great call with ADHD New Zealand at 3 a.m. this morning. And my daughter has been sick all night. So I have been up a bit longer than I had anticipated. So I'm currently operating on little sleep, coffee, and concerta. There we go.
Fair enough. To be fair, there's a pretty similar mix on this side of the table. Not quite identical, but not so far off. Yes, no, we've been, obviously it's been a long night, and we were very excited. So we've got a lot of people joining us now. We had a bit of excitement during the night where the feed went down for a short period. I got a panicky call, or not like a sensible call, and we together got it back up very, very quickly. But as a result of that, actually, we got to see, because when you're getting live, you don't get to see your data. So it then renders, you get to see your data, and we found out that we've had 4,400 attendees so far. We are pretty excited about that. And so I want to thank you and your help and support in this. And it's a big deal what we're trying to do, raise awareness and understanding of ADHD. Our tagline, I love it because I wrote it, is to help people globally, nationally, locally, and individually. And this is nothing like blowing your own trumpet. we've got questions. And people, so if you've got questions, do put them, go to globaladhd.com, go to Q&A, you can put them there. You can also upvote, downvote other people's questions. And you can also, because like we're for charity, like you can also boost it. And so overall, everyone's upvote, votes, and put yours at the top. And it's an excuse to donate. That's really what it is. So do consider, if you're putting in a question, doing a boost bar, do consider donating. We can't do this without your support. We get no money from government. Please consider doing that. Natasha, for apparently yours is the first question. I believe you've all seen these questions beforehand, potentially, possibly very, very recently, because I'm pretty sure some of them have been worked on earlier today. We've got Natasha. How does coaching with adolescents and children compare to adults?
All pressure, first person. Well, it's very much, people think it's very different, but it's actually very much the same. With teens and with adults, we really want to, coaching is about empowering the client, right? And the client brings the subject, the client brings a topic. And with teens, it's very much the same. Obviously, there has to be a bit more scaffold, but it's very much the same, because if I was to give a topic to a teen, firstly, they're not going to want to do it. And secondly, they're not going to empower to take it on themselves. And I find that when I work with teens, with younger children, it's all about giving them the empowerment to bring things themselves. Obviously, when they're under 18, there is a bit of a difference, because we have parents involved and we have other people involved. And the communication, we have to work with that. But fundamentally, the coaching is very much the same. There might need to be a bit more scaffold. There might need to be a bit more, because obviously when you're 14 to 18, the self-awareness is not always there. So there needs to be a bit more involvement with parents, with the family. However, the fundamental thing is, it is the same. When it comes to kind of younger children, it is more work with parents and more work with the family around versus the child themselves. But when it comes to kind of 14 and up and the self-awareness is already there, it is very much the same. And I feel that that's a massive kind of misconception, that it's very different and the coach is going to be more hands-on. But if I was more hands-on, it wouldn't work anyway. And that's why it really is about empowering the teen and empowering them to take it on themselves. We do have to have communication with parents, and I do get parents to have their say. But at the end of the day, when the parents have their say, it is brought to the adolescents and say, what do you think about this? And it's about bringing that family communication and that family coherence. Everybody is on the same page. So yeah, it might not just be me meeting the adult and that's it. It is me meeting the teen, and there is a bit of that parent communication, but it's very much the same, because the teen is living in a house with parents, with siblings, with everything else. When you're an adult, sometimes you're living by yourself or with one other person. When you're a teen, there's could be 4 or 5 people in the house. So there is that communication, but it is very much the same. And that's why I absolutely love it, because it empowers them to take it on. And then when they get to adults, they've got those skills and that self that they can do it, because someone's not told them what to do, someone's listened, and someone has helped them build the skills that they need to be able to do that as an adult and take that on. I hope that answers the question.
It did. Thank you very much. It's a good answer. And I think a part of what you said was the involvement of the more scaffold. Well, actually, involving the family, involving the other people, obviously the family unit. When you say scaffolding, what does that mean?
So, what I mean by that is, you might need to use a few models or something to kind of, or a visual to get the conversation going. So let's say a child comes to me and says, I need to get my homework done, right? And then you start to kind of, when you go into the exploration, you can't figure out what's going on. We might need to, I don't know, let's say it's time management. We might need to bring something in there to start the conversation, because sometimes at 14 we don't have that awareness, because our executive functions are not, we're going through that kind of developmental period that our self-awareness might not be there. So sometimes we use scaffold just to start the conversation, just to start that awareness, but it's still much on their terms, them bringing it.
And so in summary, scaffolding is building the knowledge and understanding using, and models are either ways of describing that help explain that aren't metaphors and other things, but it's It's only because I remember a long time ago, someone talked to me about a financial model, and I was like, what's it like? I had visions of people building things with sort of balsa wood, but I couldn't get my head around how that was financial. I later discovered it was a spreadsheet. And I'm like, so I think sometimes in this context, it's worth just helping build out. This is supposed to be an informational. So, Kaye, it's over to you. Kaye, over to you. Why might a student with ADHD struggle more at university than their peers? And I think this is such an important question because we see so many people. And I spoke with a senior university person not so long ago, and they said, the challenge with ADHD is it's not that they can't do it; it's that they don't finish. And God, that hit home. Right, over to you.
That's so true. It's so true that the fact that so many students actually with ADHD end up not completing their degrees and dropping out, myself included. I actually dropped out. I actually was only diagnosed in my 50s, but looking back now, that is exactly why. That's exactly what happened to me. And it's interesting, Natasha, that you were talking about scaffolding, because I think what happens when students who are either undiagnosed or already diagnosed, when they go to university, a lot of that scaffolding, that sort of emotional support, that structure at school and at home that kept them kind of just about ticking over, that kept them safe, that kept them motivated, all of that is taken away. And suddenly they're on their own. So even if they've gone with friends, it might be that, they're missing their family pet, they're missing their family. It's even things like doing the laundry, looking after yourself, cooking for yourself. Quite often people's diets suddenly fall off a cliff. Obviously there's lots of, if you think about Freshers Week and all the drinking that's out there, and there's lots of temptations, and we know that people with ADHD tend to be more impulsive. So that's another issue. And I haven't even got started on the academic work and organisation yet. So there's all this sort of emotional stuff going on. And we know that lots of people with ADHD, especially if they're not diagnosed, feel like they don't quite fit in, and then they feel a bit broken. And we do know that. And obviously for the undiagnosed students, they come in and they suddenly feel like a fish out of water. That's what one of my coaching clients said to me. I just didn't know where I was. For lots of people, that maybe their accent sounds quite different, they're in another part of the country and they're somewhere completely new. And then once you start getting with the academic work, it's all that they've gone from, quite a lot of them have gone from having 3 or 4 different subjects that kept their interest up and structured timetables, and then suddenly they might only have 5 hours of lectures a week and they're expected to do lots of reading in between. And we all know that people with ADHD have trouble with working memory. So quite often people might read a book and then have forgotten what they've read, or they don't quite know how to do note taking. There's not been that, they've not learned how to organise or prioritise work, or they struggle with that. And obviously we know that when people have got high emotions, when they're stressed, when they're anxious, their executive function skills decrease. So it's all these things compounded. It's almost like a perfect storm. And I'm always surprised as well that the university year starts in September, because most people with ADHD struggle with that change of the seasons. So September, October, their nights are getting longer and everybody's energy drops. And it's something we don't really think about in terms of students, but it does have a real impact. And we know that students, more and more students are struggling with mental health these days. And, even more over the last 2 years with COVID, people have had to negotiate online lessons, so they've not been able to meet people in the same way. There's been so many additional pressures on students. And there's also that expectation and pressure, especially in the final year, when you've got to apply for a job and look for jobs at the same time as finishing your degree, finishing your dissertation. And we do know that people with executive function issues really struggle to do both of those things at once. They're both huge things. And quite often what happens is that students with ADHD who actually manage to finish quite often then finish, and it's kind of like, oh, what now? I haven't thought about what's next. Because of course we live so much in the present moment and can't really future focus so much. What I'd like to see, Henry, more than anything, is that if I think about students investing about £10,000 per year in their education. I just think, we've been talking about screening for people in the youth offending system and prisons. Why can't universities screen students for ADHD or for other neurodivergencies when they start? It just feels like, people are investing in their education and parents are investing in their children's education. It just feels like such an obvious thing to do for universities to actually do a screening and just pick out, and then they can offer that support, and people would have much, much easier and more enjoyable time. And it would, it would reduce mental health issues, it would reduce deaths. We know that suicides are a big problem at universities in the UK. So that's my plea to universities, and I think it would just take one university to be the first to do it, and hopefully everybody else would see the results and be inspired by it. I've stopped.
Thank you. No, you're all right. I was busy in the background.
That's okay.
Although I worry you can't see me moving for reasons that are unknown, but I think you can see me. Well, so we're going to move on rapidly to the next question. Whilst you see a frozen picture of me, it is what it is. Katie, if we can ask you, what do you love about coaching ADHD women?
So I was originally a leadership coach, and I kind of feel like late diagnosed women are your ultimate leaders. They have so much influence, and fingers in so many pies. And so as someone who kind of wants to affect change, I feel like women are where it's at. In some of my group coaching, I often have women who are listening to other women and appreciating their strengths, and they kind of come alive because they're inspired by seeing the strengths of others and think, actually, maybe this is what other people think about me. And selfishly, I get that every day because I get to coach these amazing women, and I'm having that same kind of beautiful mirror effect. And I just think there's so much potential with ADHD women. And coaching is about empowerment, and women are often disempowered for many intersecting reasons. We've got misogyny, we've got an onslaught of hormones later on in life, which doesn't help with ADHD. We've got the mother load, or let's call it the woman load, because it might not be anything to do with kids. There's stuff out in the media at the moment about women now working full-time way more than ever, but still doing 40 to 60% more housework. That's a load. If you've got ADHD on top, this is huge. That's disempowerment. There's the mother load, and the fact that often ADHD women have ND kids, and therefore we are often executive function for our children, which is ridiculous when we can barely manage our own. We might also be the executive function for partners. We're navigating diagnosis often for more than ourselves. And so, Natasha's talking about the importance of having that support for children. I also think that if parents can lead with their diagnosis and their understanding, that's very, very powerful. Just like, when leaders can lead with their identity, that's going to have a massive effect on psychological safety for everyone in their team. It's kind of the same thing. So I absolutely love working with women, because when you do coaching, it's like they've got such a tight belt on, like a corset. Let's talk about women's oppression, a corset that's so tight. And what we're doing is we're starting to expand and really feel ourselves in our space and realize the potential that was there. And I love that. So I'm sorry, I've given you a load of metaphors, Henry, but I hope that answered the question.
It did. Thank you very much. And you can now see me in moving glory. No, it's important. We've actually, one of the reasons we ran late was we were talking about ADHD in women from a specialist, particularly around medication. So it's obviously an incredibly important area, and there's been a historic underdiagnosis. It's obviously a historic underdiagnosis for the entire population, but it's more so in anyone who's not a little boy who's hyperactive. Everyone else underdiagnosed. Inattentive boy, women, girls, but it's more. There's obviously difference, which we're going to go on to. I think it's Kim. Wonderful to have you here. So this is the extremely awkward question for the middle-aged white bloke.
Okay. Good question.
It's it really always feels like well, what's your, obviously, like one of the areas you particularly coach around is about being an ethnic minority and the difference that a combination has. And I think we've talked about you've been talking to me about the cultural differences, the impacts of different perceptions, and it's obviously. So, what is your advice and on giving to people in ethnic minorities about pursuing a diagnosis? The impacts. What are the sort of things you find yourself coaching around?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it's a very important topic, and one which is why I trained myself to be a coach, because I just didn't see like representation and talking about issues that I felt was important, in the topic of neurodiversity in general. And most of my clients have been people of color, very surprisingly, because I don't know, I didn't expect that, but it just shows that people do want help, but they just want to feel like they can see somebody that is similar to them that can offer that help. So I think that's really important. So I think what is really important to highlight is that neurodiversity has been, I guess it's been talked about in kind of one lens and not so much in the lens of kind of different cultures or anything like that. And I think it's really important to mention that I guess in my culture, it's very shameful to, have a neurodiversity. In my culture, it's long years, behind what we view. I mean, we're still working on neurodiversity views here, in Europe, but in different cultures, it's very shameful, and that is what I find when I'm coaching my clients, is that they're not only dealing with the practical stuff of ADHD, learning skills, they're dealing with a shame, and they're dealing with the fact that they don't have family support. And we know that one of the healing, elements of having ADHD is having a family support network. It's really important. So if you don't have that, you're really just working on skills, and you're not really fundamentally kind of thinking about, okay, well, how does being a neurodiverse person of color means to me in my existence? And I think that is really hard, and that's not really spoken about. And I think that also prevents a lot of people of color seeking a diagnosis, because they don't want that label, and they find it, there could be a lot of shameful aspects and emotional trauma to deal with, right? Because at least I can say in my Asian culture, there's a lot of pressure to do well in life, be a lawyer, be a doctor and stuff. And I definitely worked extremely hard all my life to meet those kind of expectations and never met them. And then when I was diagnosed, I felt very ashamed. I'm really ashamed of it, because I tried really, really hard. So there's a lot of feelings to that, and that makes it really hard to go seek a diagnosis in the first place, right? So I think my advice is that hopefully, in my eyes, as more and more discussions of neurodiversity through an intersectional lens becomes mainstream, more people would want to kind of share those experiences, like myself, like Sam Hugh, who I met along my journey of advocacy and discovery. I think more and more people of color or from ethnic minorities will feel safe to come forward and actually get a diagnosis, and believe that getting a diagnosis and working on all these things will help them move forward. And my other advice is, I know it's really hard, because sometimes you feel like you really want that approval from your family, you really want that support. And I honestly don't have any of that from my family, but I've got that support network from everybody else, everybody else in the community, through ADHD UK, through, WhatsApp group that I built for women who were diagnosed late. Like, you can find these communities online, and it, maybe you won't ever get that family approval, but it's all about carving support and identity away from whatever culture binds you to in terms of expectations. So I hope that makes sense. And thank you for asking the questions. I do think it's really important.
Well, thank you. And I think it is very important. And I think it's also very important that the middle-aged white bloke doesn't just shy away from it for fear of getting it wrong, which I think can be very easily done. And it's not something we are. And I thank you, because you are helping us build, and you do a support group, particularly with us, focus on being an ethnic minority and ADHD. And it is very important. And having talked to people when they talk about that intersection, it's very clear how important that discussion is, and having people who are in the same situation to talk about. And so thank you for your part of that, and thank you for answering that. I missed a question and jumped over Lex. Your question is, what is rejection-sensitive dysphoria? How is it linked to ADHD, and how might a coach help? And I think it'd be interesting to talk about where it sits in terms of what people's perception of it, because I think it has. Over to you.
Well, I love the irony that I'm talking about RSD and you forgot about Henry. But ultimately, how I paraphrase RSD, which is quite often the thing that people find quite painful when they realise they experience ADHD, that there's this coexisting thing called RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And how I put it in a nutshell is essentially it could actually be happening, but it's more so when you're perceiving that you're failing to meet your own or other people's expectations. And once that's triggered, so you're perceiving that you're either not meeting someone else's or not meeting your own expectations, it hits you like an adrenaline punch, like right in there, wherever it hits you. That's where mine goes, right into the chest. And then what happens after that is a snowball of sort of catastrophizing. And what causes that, once you've had those triggered thoughts, is an adrenaline spikes. But our central nervous system is incapable of knowing if the difference between someone stood at the door trying to harm you or a spelling mistake on a report that your manager's just raised with you. So it's one of those things that is quite often a light bulb moment for people who have just become diagnosed or just become aware of RSD, because you can see the patterns and how they've influenced your life right from a very early age. And quite often, as well as the thing that started to put your mask on when you were at school, is that sort of real draw of wanting to meet the expectations of your peers and your teachers. More so teachers, I think, when you're younger, because our executive dysfunction starts to come out, and we sort of very quickly recognise that we're not quite the same as everybody else for a number of different ways, and that can often be the first memories that people have of putting the mask on. So it's something that is, for me as a coach, is because I work with people who are diagnosed later in life predominantly, is realising and understanding and mapping out how that has impacted life and how you can manage that moving forward. Sadly, it's something that you'll never completely get rid of, but it is something that we can strategize and develop some tools in the bag of tools that you can use to manage all of our ADHD traits, that we can minimize the impact that it can have, because it can feel, in the moment, it feels catastrophic, and can feel like you're fine, everything's great, and then we can really seriously catastrophize, sort of throwing the towel and ending it, especially damaging with relationships. I mean, we've talked about in education how a lot of us didn't finish, and there's for lots of different reasons, but I certainly remember vividly several times quitting because I just thought, can't do this, done, before I realised I experienced ADHD and I have autism and RSD. So it's one of those things that we can, as we pan back in life, we can see just how devastating it has been to our whole picture, but equally is something that we can put in place some really good tools to manage moving forward. Thank you. One of the things around rejection sensitivity, you just nailed me on.
there is a whole load of debate, right, about does rejection sensitivity dysphoria exist, and that it hasn't had full academic research, and therefore, it's not part of the psychiatric formal guidance, etc. And I do think that kind of misses, like, from my perception, it feels like it misses the point, which is that a whole load of people have real sensitivity about rejection, and as a coach, helping them with that is extraordinarily helpful. And it doesn't matter if it's got a formal name or not. What matters is, here is someone who's got a problem that you've met many times before and have an understanding of. I think it would be useful to go through that full, so that we can build up more tools and people can have researched and provide more, even more guidance. But I do feel like that debate gets a bit polarized. Well, it's not formally recognized, but does it really matter? If someone's coming to you with that.
No, it's how it's the only important thing is how if somebody identifies with how someone explains RSD and they go, wow, that happens to me, it's irrelevant if it's diagnosed or not. We work on that because it's real and it's painful and it's damaging.
Yeah.
And equally feeds into that whole if you can't see it, it doesn't really exist mentality that we have around neurodiversity in its entirety. You don't look autistic probably 3 or 4 times a week. And I think that in itself, those are quite harmful things that we experience as human beings who are neurodivergent.
I do think that's you don't look autistic. That's and on ADHD, I was talking to someone, I was running late, and I was like, I'm running late. I've got ADHD, I'm running late. And actually, I was just trying to be like I can't do the thing you want me to do because, like, at the moment, actually, shocker, I'm going to be on, I'm going to do your thing. And they were like, no, look, everyone runs late. You can't have that one on ADHD, mate. And I was just like, ooh, I bit my tongue.
I have that with keys. My keys for like 42 years. Can't you just put your keys in the same place? No, I literally can't. But thank you for. I have alarms that just I put on them now because there's no point trying to talk to myself with that one anymore. So yeah, absolutely understand.
My wonderful wife is buying us the tags, and it's mostly because in the last 2 weeks I've left my keys in the front door 4 times.
Yeah, I've done that.
But it's
no
just
shame.
It was very well. It was the whole burglary problem, and being murdered in your sleep issue. Katie's raised her hand on murdering me, and so not sure where this is going, but okay, go for it. And then it's Alex, and then we've got some questions that have been submitted.
I just want to ask a question of the panel, really, because this comes up in my coaching. People get told this: you don't look like you have ADHD, you don't look autistic. What's your best response personally that you've come back with? I'm going to Henry, Lex, Alex, anybody?
Natasha's raised her hand. She's.
Go on, Natasha.
I say, well, you don't look neurotypical. So I do that because or I say, well, what does ADHD look like then? And that usually I ask that. So it's usually, it depends what sort of day I've had. If I'm sensory overloaded, it's you don't look neurotypical. If it's a day where I've got that capacity, then I say, well, what do you think ADHD looks like? Because I feel that opens the conversation into then educating and teaching someone what it could be.
That's such a wonderful coach answer. It's either I'm going to coach this person into understanding, I'm going to help them, what do you think it means? Or it's just like, no, you don't look normal, mate. Said with longer words. It's absolutely wonderful. Good question, Katie. Next time you're in charge, I'll give you the camera. Alex, what is the difference between ADHD coaching and therapy?
I got asked this question at 3 a.m. as well, so I feel like I'm primed. I had less executive functioning available to me on that call. I like to think of the difference as an analogy that a good coach friend, Tony Coward, uses, which is, if a car is broken down, the therapist will help you understand why you got to that point. Like what happened and then the car broke down and you're here and what we're going to do about that. The coach is like, you've figured out why the car's broken down, and now you're figuring out where you want to move forwards. What do you want to do now the car can get back on the road, and how are we going to get there? And so it's there's a difference of focus in terms of past and future with therapy and coaching. But I want to caveat this. The coaching in the therapy field is so super diverse that often if you ask a different therapist who might also be a coach, you might get a little bit of a different answer because there's so much crossover. But there is one thing I think that does delineate the two, which is that a therapist is trained to work with mental health issues, and they're there to also work with things like suicide, right? And that often a lot of coach training does not go into that level of depth of training. They're not trained to work with someone who's acutely suicidal. And in my foundational coaching training, they explicitly said that there is a point by which it's not your remit to support someone if they're acutely suicidal. So I think there are some quite clear boundaries around this. But beyond that, if someone has ADHD and they've got some things that they want to work on around their ADHD, it might be more appropriate to go seek a coach. One other thing I would say is it's about the lack of awareness and training that therapists have had about ADHD in particular. I know many clients who I see as a therapist have come to me because their ADHD has been pathologized or it has been described as simply trauma. Now we know that there is something of trauma intersecting with ADHD, and I'm not disputing that, but I think it can be quite damaging for some ADHD individuals where actually the therapeutic healing and support that they needed from that therapist wasn't there because of ignorance. And funnily enough, Kaye Friedman and I are trying to correct that by developing a course for such things for coaches and therapists. Which is an ICF accredited course. But I think that there is something about, often if you're an ADHD coach, you have ADHD. So there is this lived experience and this knowledge and this understanding, and what I call profound empathy, that can happen when two ADHDs get together to talk about things that are really personal and really quite intimate. And you really need to know that that's something that you can trust someone with. And in my experience, that happens more with an ADHD coach than it can with a therapist. And I think that's just a knowledge gap. But I hope that I went off a bit there, but I hope that helps delineate the two a bit.
It did. I think that was a wonderful metaphor, and it's wonderful to bring in Tony, who sadly can't be here today. Bright questions. As we've had some questions submitted and actually very heavily upvoted. How hard is it to learn coaching skills? I teach and manage mentor students. Some of whom have ADHD as I do. How would I and colleagues best go about learning some basic coaching skills to use with neurodivergent students and colleagues? And how big an investment of time would you expect this to be? Who wants to take that? Crickets. Katie, over to you.
I vote Katie.
Well, if you are a manager, which it sounds like you are, then certainly our 20-hour course would be well suited to you. We're piloting it at the moment this month, ADHD Awareness Month, and it should be ready for sign up for February. We are specifically encouraging ADHDers onto that course. So if you didn't have ADHD, you'd be getting a very rich experience through the lived experience that all the participants bring, as well as obviously the training that both Alex and I have. And yeah, I think it's very important not to, in the autistic community, they talk about nothing about us without us. And I think that's really important when it comes to education. I've seen some pretty dire courses that have been run by neurotypicals and use words like how to deal with neurodivergent clients. So, you know, I just think you're in much safer hands if you have well-trained leaders of a course who understand learning and understand that learning can be really different even within the ADHD community, because we have very different processing preferences and communication preferences. So leaders who can hold different ways of learning. and keep up the pace, because let's face it, focus is the thing.
Henry, do you mind if I just add on to that? Sorry to interrupt.
No, I do not. Go for it.
I also wanted to build on from that, Kate, because the other thing I hear a lot is, well, how will it benefit neurotypical minds? And one of the things that's really important to understand is that anything that benefits neurodivergent minds hugely benefits all minds, because we need clarity, we need no ambiguity, we need clear communication, and all of those things benefit all minds. And just on the end of that question that was just had about how long would it take, I think if you're looking at coaching as an entirety, I think it's a lifelong thing. Once you have the aptitude for wanting to coach, and you have those sort of integral skills and desire, it's a lifelong journey. We're always researching and looking and enjoying and indulging all of the different and new theories that come along. We're just hearing about Alex and Kate's course right now, and we're super excited about that. And it's because we're constantly seeking and learning and developing and adapting. So it's definitely a lifelong, whether you're coaching or in leadership positions as well.
Thank you.
Can I just add as well, Henry? I think sometimes I think we're prone to overcomplicating things as well, and actually just the importance of listening, like really listening to somebody else's lived experience and not dismissing it is absolutely crucial. So if somebody tells you, that they're having a really difficult time because they can't organise their work, and then actually listen to them and believe them. I think there's so much in that, and meeting somebody human to human. That's what we do as coaches, but you can do that without any coaching training. It's just a case of caring enough, being compassionate, really listening and really wanting to help people. And actually that doesn't take any training. It's about your values and how you see other people.
No, I think that's a wonderful insight. I can also see the value of learning the constructs of how to question someone and that openness. And and if someone feels that they don't have those skills, I often think that someone who's asking that kind of question usually has the right mindset, which means that because if they're asking it, they've already got the insight that they know to do it differently, and that's kind of the big leap ahead of time.
It is, but I think if you're managing a team of people, it's really important that the people in the team, the ones who have that sort of face-to-face contact with students on a daily basis, that everybody knows that about the importance of listening and about that mindset. It's about getting that message down to everybody within the university or within the organisation, whatever it is. Sorry, I will shut up now.
That's right. It's an ADHD meeting.
I know.
And you've been very good at everyone raising their hand, thinking, good job, team. We've had another question, which is, what level of professional qualification or accreditation should someone look for when choosing an ADHD coach? And the answer is not my qualification that I'm doing. No, you're allowed to answer the question, Alex. I'm teasing. I think Alex has raised his hand, and let me know any other takers.
So there are a few different, I guess you could call them governing bodies, or bodies that kind of represent the coaching professions. And one of the main ones is the ICF, the International Coaching Federation. And for a lot of us, they hold up the standard, the code of ethics by which we agree with and we operate in as coaches. And so technically the coaching profession isn't a protected category. So anybody could call themselves a coach, whether they've done training or not. But what I would also say is if you're exploring coaching in terms of going on a course, see if they have met some kind of ethical standards of their training. There's also someone's going to have to chip in here, the Association for Coaching. Lex is definitely going to be well placed to pick up from here. But yeah, I would say to look at something that has some kind of meeting a standard. It just gives you a bit of peace of mind, and you know that someone has got accountability and due diligence.
Thank you. I think that an overarching body is a good thing. Certainly in something like ICF also demand at least 100 hours of coaching, which is going to segue nicely into. So as a charity, we think finding good coaches is incredibly important. We've created the Coach Marketplace, which I think you're all on. So thank you very much. It's also a kindness because a percentage comes to us, which is very gratefully received in terms of helping the charity fund itself. But it does come from a primary thing of trying to help people find the coach that's right for them, because we know how life-changing that can be. We are intending over the next couple of weeks to start a new segment, which is going to be for people who have just trained, but are looking to, who don't have that experience yet. And so we know that there are people who can't yet, who can't afford a coach or like don't have the means. We want to put them with those people who also want to give out free or very, very low cost training hours. And in doing so, like, it's a wonderful symbiosis of helping both parties. One, get their qualification, which can be tough trying to find clients, and the other looking to. And we want more people trained in coaching who really understand ADHD. We want to facilitate this, but it's a lovely win-win that we see. So that's going to be happening in the next few weeks. We've obviously already got the infrastructure to do it. That's it. Kim's raised her hand.
Yeah. Sorry, can I add to that? Yeah, I think it's really important about the governing body so that people can understand is that I think it's the philosophy of coaching, right? I remember getting a coach before kind of being certified, and I immediately recognized the difference between my training and versus me getting a coach and then checking, the qualification side, etc. I think it's really important because the mindset through a coach is empowering the client. It's not about suggesting things, and that is it's just very different. So you will notice when you kind of talk to a coach who did go through that rigorous training and that philosophy, that there is a whole different approach to coaching, which is about empowering you, and it's never suggesting things or it's very different. So I just wanted to add that.
No, thank you. And Alex, and then we've got to cut it. Lex, sorry.
It's just so I just want to tag on to the last sort of ethics around coaching is some other key things are making sure that people have insurance as well as being qualified, and I totally agree with everything around being associated with professional bodies. There are like Henry has the marketplace, which cuts out any needs because it can feel quite overwhelming. There's so many coaches if you Google them, but there are some places which already hold people to account. So Henry uses the marketplace. There's also companies like Head Stuff that also hold their coaches to very high account and already done the due diligence as far as insured, qualified, and those sorts of places can give you that peace of mind because Henry puts us all through our paces, as does Sarah Templeton, who you met last night, to hold people to a high standard. So there are companies like that also that can really help you sort of go through that process without feeling overwhelmed trying to access coaching, because it can feel quite overwhelming with the amount of people that there are. So find people like Henry and Sarah who hold us to account.
Thank you. Well, you're just wonderful. You're all wonderful. That's it for this segment. We have to move on. It'd be great, like, just so if people they can all contact you through the marketplace. But do you want to tell, like, it'd be just nice if you could tell people where they could contact you. So perhaps just a sign out thank you, and you can reach me at your web address if you could. You're all happy to do that. We'll do it in the order on the screen, which in this case you actually can see. So we'll start with Kaye and then go whatever, I'm assuming clockwise. So the Kaye, Alex, Natasha, Kim, Lex, Katie.
Oh, thank you, Henry, and thank you, everybody. It's been fascinating. I could talk for hours. I'm sure we all could. Couldn't we go and get a cup of coffee and talk for hours? But anyway, so yeah, if you wanted to work with me, my name's Kaye, and my web address is HappierYou. So Kaye at happieryou.co.uk, and I also work with Head Stuff with Alex as well. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise, it's been really, really great to be with some friends and colleagues today and share and spread the word. So you can contact me at alex at adhdalex.com. Hopefully that should be easy to remember, but all information on me is at adhdalex.com.
I'm going to third that and say been a nice start to my morning, and I feel for people that have been up all the night, and it's really great an honour to be here. I've wrote mine down so I wouldn't forget, and it's www.adhdalex.com. indigo-hub.com, and yeah, you can reach me on there.
Kim.
Yeah, I'll go next. I think the easiest is if you go to ADHD UK marketplace and find me, Kim To. I will also be on Head Stuff pretty soon as well. Or you can contact me directly via my website, which is Own Your Flair, and Flair is spelled as Flair. There you go.
Thanks, Kim. Lex.
Again, I'll third, fourth, all of that. Thanks so much to Henry and the team as well in the background. I know that they've been working super hard. But as, I work exclusively through Head Stuff, or you can find my profile on ADHD UK.
Thank you. And Katie.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Henry, because I think, you know, all these amazing coaches do great stuff, but we're often absolutely overloaded with, you know, the stuff that we do, and we don't get time to platform and have a voice, and you've provided that. So thank you so much. You can find me at goldmindneurodiversity.com. My TED Talk's there, or find me on LinkedIn, Katie Friedman, PCC. And also on ADHD UK Marketplace.
Nice, good plug at the end. Guys, you've been amazing. Thank you so much. I've loved spending this hour with you. I think we've answered some important questions around coaching, and obviously your support of the charity and all you're doing, and your support of individuals, just wonderful. Have a great rest of your day. See you soon, no doubt. And thank you again.
Thank you. Bye, Henry.
Thank you so much, Henry and the team, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Right, handing over. So that was a wonderful session.